Hello everyone, this is Ariadne Rainbird, and today I'm going to be talking about a lesser known goddess within Orphismos. Within the Orphic hymns there are hymns to a couple of deities who are very little known, and one of those is Melinoe. So Melinoe is only really mentioned in the Orphic hymns and in some metal tablets, which I'll talk about a little bit later. So firstly, I'll talk a little bit about Orphismos and Orphism in general, as it's understood in the living Orphic tradition. Orphismus or Orphism is a mystery tradition or group of traditions within Hellenismos or Hellenism, the ancient Greek religion, which is closely connected with the Bacchic mysteries and is often known as the Bacchic Orphic mysteries. It can be seen as the religion of Dionysos, who in Orphismos is Soter, the saviour. It is also closely connected with the Eleusinian mysteries, with Persephone also having an important role as Sotera, saviouress. The gold tablets, often referred to as the Bacchic Orphic tablets, which have been discovered in burials of Bacchic Orphic initiates throughout ancient Greece and Rome, dating from the 5th century BCE to the 3rd century CE, contain funerary inscriptions giving instructions for the afterlife, in which Persephone and Dionysos are petitioned, or where the initiate is instructed to tell Persephone that they have been liberated by Dionysos himself. And I discussed this more in my previous talk on Hecate in the living Orphic tradition. So if you'd like to know a little bit more about Orphismos in general and the Bacchic Orphic gold tablets, then please see my video on Hecate. There are a number of texts which are considered Orphic, including the Orphic Rhapsodic Theogony, which exists in fragments, and the body of invocations or prayers known as the Orphic Hymns. Melinoe is a goddess who appears in the Orphic hymns, with hymn number 71 in the collection being dedicated to her. So here we have her prayer or her hymn, and this is the Thomas Taylor translation, which I'll read out now. I call Melinoe, saffron-veiled terrene, who came from infernal Pluton's sacred queen. Mixed with Cronian Zephyrs arose, near where Cocytus's mournful river flows. When under Pluton's semblance, Zephyrs divine, deceived with guileful arts, dark Proserpine. Hence, partly black, thy limbs, and partly white, from Pluton dark, from Zephyrs ethereal bright. Thy coloured members men by night inspire, when seen in spectred forms with terrors dire. Now darkly visible, invoked in night, perspicuous now they meet the fearful sight. Terrestrial queen, expel wherever found the soul's mad fears to earth's remotest bound. With holy aspect on our incense shine, and bless thy mystics, and the rites divine. Melinoe is described as a chthonic goddess, a wanderer with domain over the dead. She is a daughter of Zephyrs, who may have been disguised as Pluton when he mated with Persephone, and Persephone. Zephyrs is also can appear in form Zephyrs Chthonion, the underworldly Zephyrs, who is Pluton. So Pluton can be seen as in Orphismos particularly as a form of Zephyrs. There are a number of possible derivations of Melinoe's name, which I will go through in a minute. But as a daughter of Zephyrs and Persephone, that makes Melinoe the full sister of Dionysos Zagreus, as he was the son of Zephyrs and Persephone. She could also be possibly a form of Hecate. She's also sometimes seen as being a manifestation of Persephone's rage. And she was born at the Cocytus River, and the river's name means morning. And the Cocytus River is one of the 5 rivers of the underworld. So there are a number of possible derivations of her name. Melinos, meaning having the colour of quince. Melon, the tree fruit or quince. Melan, meaning black. Melena, the black one or the soothing one, or gentle-minded. The colour of quince. Quinces were a yellow-green colour that the Greeks associated with death. Melinon, dark-minded. Propitiation-minded, from melia, meaning propitiation, and nous, mind. Melia is a word used to describe propitiatory offerings to the ghosts of the dead. Melia, the ash tree. Meli, honey. Melismos, meaning dismembering or dividing. So you can see there's a lot of possible derivations of her name, depending on which letters are used in the spelling. And when we think back to ancient times, spelling wasn't standardized as it tends to be now. So although it might have been written one way in her Orphic hymn, it could have been written other ways elsewhere if we had any records. So there are a lot of possible derivations for her name. So her name could associate her with blackness, the underworld, the colour of death, and propitiatory offerings to the dead, and honey, which was also given as a propitiatory offering to the dead. Zephyr seduced Persephone near the mouth of the river Cocytus, which is one of the 5 rivers which encircles Hades, its name meaning lamentation. It flows into the river Acheron, on the other side of which is Hades. The 5 rivers are the Styx, which is also the name of the goddess of the river, a daughter of Tethys. The Phlegathon, which means flaming. Lethe, which means forgetfulness. And Acheron, the river of woe. And of course, Cocytus, which means mourning. Thomas Taylor translates the hymn as saying that Melinoe is half black and half white. But the literal translation is 2-bodied or double-bodied, and it's unclear what is meant by this. There are references to a myth that Zephyr disguised himself as Pluton in order to seduce Persephone. And the hymn, as translated by Thomas Taylor, does say or suggest that Melinoe's light side is of Zephyr and her dark side of the underworld of Pluton. There are, other than the Pergamon tablet, which I'll discuss later, there appears to be no other references to Melinoe outside this hymn. As a daughter of Zephyr and Persephone, Melinoe is sister to Dionysos, who is also described in his hymn as 2-formed. Thomas Taylor relates her 2 forms to her birth from celestial Zephyr and chthonic Persephone, or to do with Zephyr and Hades. In Orphismos, however, Pluton is known as the chthonic Zephyr, one of the 3 Zephyrs, Poseidon, the god of the sea, being the other one of the Zephyrs. Franz Graf, in Serious Singing, the Orphic Hymns as Religious Text, sees the arrangement of the Orphic hymns as following the progression of a nocturnal ritual. Others argue for a cosmological interpretation of the order of the hymns. But Graf emphasises the fear of meeting a divinity or phasma that would be unkind and in a violent state and could drive the initiates into madness. He argues that the hymns create a mystery experience that is, at least in part, dangerous and frightening. There is a concern with madness as a possible negative result of the initiatory experiences. And this kind of reminds me of some of the myths around ancient monuments here in Wales and in other parts of the UK. There's a monument near me, for example, called Tinkinswood. And there's a legend that if you spend the night there at Beltane or at midsummer, then you'll either be dead in the morning or you'll wake up mad or a mystic or poet. So there is this idea of this mystical initiation, which can be very dangerous and can lead to death, madness, or the breakthrough of mysticism and poetry. Graff argues that the order of the hymns starts with a hymn to Hecate, reflecting the ritual reality of entering the sanctuary and passing the Hecatean in front of the entrance of the sanctuary. The next hymn then is to goddess Nyx, which Graff argues is due to the rite beginning at night, and thus asking for her protection from the daemons and spectres which may appear in the night. Whilst the hymn to Eos, the dawn, occurs towards the end of the hymns, when the rites are coming to an end. The central hymns deal with invocations to Dionysos and his two mothers, Persephone and Semele, following the Orphic myth of Dionysus' birth from Persephone and then from Semele. The Orphic hymns ask the divinities to be present and to participate in the ritual. They consist mostly of invocation, and the requests of the deities are very general, asking simply for help with the initiate's life. Unlike other ancient prayers, they do not contain a central argument establishing the petitioner's right to receive the help of the gods. And Graff argues that this is because the praying persons are already initiates, and this is enough to establish a close connection with the divinity that justifies their help. The prayers ask the deities to appear in a way that is good to meet, rather than frightening or dangerous, because the epiphany of a deity can be extremely frightening. Hippolytus's Refutio Omnium Heresium gives an invocation to Hecate with a number of epithets and identification with other goddesses, and at the end implores her to come in a way that is good to meet, and says that as soon as he has spoken this, you see fire shooting through the air, and they're afraid of this unexpected view and cover their eyes. Ancient reports of mystery rites describe real and frightening apparitions and threats to sanity, and a number of the Orphic hymns ask for protection from frightening visions and psychic disturbances. The hymn to Corybus, for example, asks to send away difficult wrath and to put an end to visions, torments of the terrified soul. This is the realm of ecstatic cults where divinity may drive a person mad by sending apparitions and ghosts. In the mystery traditions, the initiates meet the deity face to face. This could lead to bliss and transcendence, but also to fear and madness. There was said to be an attacking daemon called the Empusa, who frightened Eleusinian initiates, presumably if they'd not been properly prepared and purified. Iamblichus describes evil spirits who hinder initiates who have not been adequately purified. Plutarch also described the Eleusinian mysteries as progressing from every terrible thing: panic, trembling, sweat, and bewilderment, to final bliss, where a marvellous light meets you. Pure places and meadows receive you, with voices dancing, and the splendour of sacred sounds and pure visions. Such fears may have been particularly pertinent in the Dionysian mysteries, as the central experience of the Bacchic cult was mania. In one story of Dionysos' birth from Semele, one by Polydorus, Hera drives Dionysos mad, and he roamed around Syria and Egypt and arrived at Phrygia, where Cybele purifies him and gives him the holy robes and rites of initiation. Dionysos has to be healed from mania, and his mysteries are based in this process. The Dionysian telete, or initiation rituals, heal madness. The hymn to Melinoe, the sister of Dionysos, asks her to help with this, sending away the torments of the soul and sewing a kindly face to the initiates. Melinoe can drive humans mad with airy ghosts, but she is also intimately connected with the mysteries of Dionysos. This is a similar concept to occult ideas of the dweller on the threshold. Dionysos is connected with mania and is driven by madness, but also protects the initiates from madness. Graff describes the Dionysian madness as a kind of vaccination that protects from madness, but at the same time holds the danger of real madness if the initiate is not properly prepared with purification, worship, and ritual work. The initiates confronted during ritual with the terror that they may face ask the divinities that they present with a benign side and with the absence of the wrong sort of madness. Now, so I mentioned earlier that there had been a couple of tablets found, and these are a couple of the tablets, the Pergamon bronze tablet on the left and the Sardis bronze tablet on the right. So the Pergamon tablet is believed to be a device for some type of divination, and it invokes Hecate using many different names, many of which are known as independent goddesses. So, for example, Persephone, Nyx, Dione, and Melinoe are mentioned. 3 crowned goddesses surrounded by dense inscriptions, which are mostly untranslatable, mainly barbarous words and syllables for incantation. And here we can see an image of the actual words, which weren't very clear on the actual photograph. So you can see that there are very dense inscriptions there, some very strange symbols which are not translatable around the edge, and then there's strings of Greek vowels. And the vowels in ancient Greek philosophical and theurgic traditions were often used to invoke the harmony of the spheres. There's also possibly barbarous words or voces magicae. These nonsense words, it's just the chanting of the sound of which, as an incantation, can invoke certain powers. They're just syllables for incantation. So the strings of vowels could be invoking the harmony of the 7 celestial spheres, and then barbarous words, perhaps invoking other sorts of powers. The inscription around the figure labelled Phoebe invokes Persephone, Melinoe, and Leucophrene, the latter referencing Artemis Leucophrene, who received cult worship at Magnesia in Thessaly. So this is the figure of Phoebe down the bottom here. It's not very easy to see the inscription here, unfortunately. The lettering dates to the 3rd century CE, and there are esoteric symbols inscribed on the edges of the tablet, which have not, sorry about this flicking back and forwards, which have not been translated. We don't really know what the meaning of those is. There's a central hole, and the tablet may have been suspended over a surface and used for divination, or it may have been the base for a statue. And when it was found, the publication of the find didn't give any information about much else about the circumstances of the find or really where it was found, but it was found with 9 or 10 other magical instruments. Thunderstones, which are basically stone axes, a bronze disc, a 4-sided and inscribed bronze nail, 2 rings, and 2 or 3 bronze lamellae, which are inscribed with magical figures as well. So Melinoe is a deity of the Orphic Hymns who is said to bring madness and nightmares and to lead a host of ghosts. One meaning of her name is of a black mind. The Pergamon tablet is a bronze triangular tablet which depicts Hecate Trimorphis as three goddesses whose names are inscribed as Phoebe, Dione, and Nixie. Nixie is a theonym of the goddess Nyx, referring to awakening in the night. According to an article by Demeter Georgiev, Phoebe, although the name of a Titan goddess, a goddess of the bright intellect, can also refer to Artemis, sister of Phoebus Apollon. Artemis and Apollon also both have the epithet ekatos, or far shooting, connected with Hecate. Demeter Georgiev says that the Greek poet Bacchid, who lived between 540 and 451 BCE, said that Nyx is Hecate. Although Nyx is not generally seen as a chthonic goddess, here she represents the darkness of the underworld, or the underground darkness. Dione is a Titan goddess, the mother of Aphrodite, and an early wife of Zeus. However, Persephone, according to Ovid, is also known by epithets Deois and Dione, meaning the goddess. Epithets such as Melindia, Melinoe, Melivia, and Melitotis also refer to Persephone as Queen of Darkness. Georgiev argues that the naming of Hecate with the name Melinoe suggests the high degree of syncretism between the two goddesses. Hecate and Persephone, and their parallel worship in cult practices. Hecate was originally depicted as a single image, and only later, in the 5th century BCE, appears as a triple goddess when the sculptor Pergamon made the first surviving triple Hecate. And Georgiev argues that this is the result of cult syncretism with other deities. On the tablet, all three goddesses are given the epithet Amivusa, the meaning of which is unclear. It may derive from a particular cult practice around the city of Pergamon. According to Aristotle and Plutarch, Amia is a type of fish, and Vusa could be interpreted as voska, or feed, in connection with the use of this fish in sacrifice to the goddesses. However, William Bruce and Cassandra Jackson Miller state that Amivusa is a present active participle, which either labels the figures, if taken as nominative, or actively addresses them. The verb amivo in the active has a sense of to change or exchange, or with regard to place, to pass, or to cross. And this may refer to Hecate's role as intermediary, helping mortals transition between states. And it may also translate as Hecate being the one that transforms. The third triangle, the second triangle rather, is the Sardis triangle. So the Sardis triangle comes from between the 4th and 6th centuries CE. And it also has inscriptions of these three goddesses. And then there's also the Apamea triangle from between the 5th and the 6th century CE. And the Apamea triangle, the third triangle, was found in his destroyed house amidst a layer of burnt materials from the roof, mixed in with lime from the floor. It's therefore likely connected with rituals in private homes. Images of Hecate, identifiable by her attributes, are incised on the surface, along with epithets and magical characters. The names Dion, Phoebe, and Lycia are inscribed above the three goddess figures. The word Amivusa is inscribed beneath the feet of each figure. Sequences of 7 characters are inscribed, perhaps to invoke the harmony of the spheres. So this is the Sardis triangle that I'm talking about now. All three triangles have a central stand attached. The Sardis one has a boss with a rectangular hole. The Apamea triangle has no magical characters on it at all. The Sardis one has fewer than the Pergamon one does. The Pergamon triangle is the only one to contain Vocis Magicae and additional epithets, perhaps part of an invocation. The Sardis tablet is a simplified version of the Pergamon tablet. Tablets of this type depict syncretic forms of Hecate, where she is combined with goddesses such as Artemis, Selene, and Persephone, amongst others. And they have similarity to texts in the Greek magical papyri, and may have been used in Greco-Egyptian magical practice. They may also have had a theurgic context, as Sardis, Pergamon, and Apamea all were centres of late Platonism. In Platonic theurgy, Hecate was equated with the world's soul and assisted philosophers in crossing from the material and impermanent world of change to the changeless, unified, and immortal realm of the intellect. In order to gain Hecate's assistance in this, the theurgist would invoke Hecate to appear before him and give oracular instructions. A standard ritual involved surrounding a statue of Hecate with various attributes and symbols and performing a ritual to animate her statue. So it's possible that these triangles could have been statue bases with the magical invocations around the statue to help in the invocation of the goddess into her statue. Now, Melinoe is also associated with ghosts, with her connection with the underworld. In common Greek religion, when a person dies, the psyche goes to Hades and does not return. There's a clear separation between the realms of the dead and the living, with only a few heroes being able to cross the Styx and visit Hades and return alive. However, in the mystery traditions, such as in Orphism, the hero's journey can be taken by all through initiatory rituals and through the belief in metempsychosis, or transmigration of the soul, also known as reincarnation. In popular beliefs, in certain cases, the dead could return to Earth, and there are stories of ghosts, the Aori, the premature dead, in some cases, who are not allowed to enter Hades, but remain between Earth and Hades, and can become dangerous for the living, especially those who have died violently or not been buried. In Homer's Iliad, Achilles is visited by Patroclus' ghost. In the Odyssey, Odysseus meets the psyche of Elpine, requesting burial because they were in limbo and could not fully enter Hades. Ataphoi are unburied bodies and show the importance of funerary rites. Ghosts are not described as having a frightening appearance, but as being like shadows or dreams. They may not be dangerous or vengeful, but can inspire fear in the living. There is a reciprocal necessity between the living and the dead. In the Odyssey, Odysseus needed the help of the soul of Tiresias, and the action of the living is important to the dead. Death is familiar and the unavoidable destiny of mortal life. The afterlife in Homer is seen as far less attractive than earthly life, and the dead live in a dark, shady world as shadows of their former selves. Lucian, a satirical writer writing much later in the 2nd century CE, who was a Roman writer, tells a number of stories where ghosts have contact with the living. In one story, the ghost of a dead woman visits her husband, complaining that one of her slippers had not been cremated with her, and her husband has to find the slipper and burn it. In another story, a brave philosopher volunteers to stay the night in a haunted house, where there is said to be a dangerous and horrific supernatural presence which is described as a black and long-haired creature who can become a bull, a dog, or a lion, and kills anyone who stays in the house. The philosopher uses his Egyptian book of spells to fight against the ghost. And you see him there in this picture, casting spells against the ghost. He then digs in the corner of a room and finds the bones of a deceased person buried, and the ghost disappears. Lucian uses the terms phasma, daemon, psyche, and necron for ghosts, and these spirits are seen as having the power to interact with the living and to be dangerous. Lucian does not concern himself with any explanation of how they met their death, but an improper burial or cremation appears to be the cause of their hauntings. But Lucian's ghosts, unlike Homer's, can be frightening, dangerous, and violent. In Homer, ghosts are tiny winged creatures. Penelope's suitors are described as bats after their death. Other sources describe the psyche more like birds, small, insubstantial creatures that flit from the body to Hades upon death. In scenes around gravestones, however, the dead are often depicted as they are in life. Ghosts often appear then to visit the living to confront their other existence and their life in Hades. Another possible connection of Melinoe is with bees and honey. So I mentioned that honey was used as an offering to the dead. A religion, like science, seeks to explore how life emerges out of inorganic substances or dead matter. And in ancient Greece, there was the idea of bougonia. And this is the idea that bees emerged from the carcasses of dead bulls, oxen, and cows, symbolizing life emerging from death, life, death, and rebirth. This represents Zoe, the eternal life force that endures death and renewal. Honey would become a constant ingredient in libations and rituals to the dead. The ancient Greek philosopher Porphyry stated that honey was a symbol of death, and for that reason it was usual to offer libations of honey to the divinities of the underworld. The Greek historian Plutarch wrote, "Mead was used as a libation before the cultivation of the vine, and even now those who do not drink wine have a honey drink." Bees were also used as a symbol of rebirth in ancient Greek mystery rites. Thus, Porphyry wrote that the priestesses who served the goddess Demeter were known as Melissae. These Melissae commemorated a previous elderly priestess of the same name, who was initiated into the mysteries of the goddess by none other than Demeter herself. When Melissa's female friends tried to force her to reveal the secrets given to her during her initiation, she refused to tell. As a result, her neighbours tore her to pieces. This also reflects the myth of Dionysos and the myth of Orpheus and of Pentheus, who were also associated with the Dionysian mysteries and were all torn to pieces. And they left her body to rot in the open air. Demeter was outraged at the loss of her priestess and her treatment by the women, and so she caused a swarm of angry, avenging bees to arise out of Melissa's dead body and to pursue the murderous women. The sting of the pursuing bees can also lead to madness. Priestesses of other deities, such as Artemis and Aphrodite, were also known as Melissae, and the oracles at Delphi were known as Delphic bees. It is possible that the oracle may have consumed mad honey, that is, hallucinogenic honeys made by the bees from certain species of rhododendron flowers. Or they may have simply consumed fermented honey, which sent them into a trance state and gave them visions, and they uttered prophecies. Dionysos is also associated with fermented honey and with beekeeping. His foster father, Aristaeus, is the god of beekeeping, amongst other things. Aristaeus is also associated with the Bougonia tradition and with the Orphic mysteries. It was Aristaeus who pursued Eurydice after her marriage to Orpheus, causing her to step on a poisonous serpent as she fled from him. Eurydice died from the snake bite and descended to Hades. Aristaeus was punished by the gods for causing the death of Eurydice by having all his beehives destroyed. Aristaeus then sacrificed bulls to the gods to appease them, and after the sacrifices, the gods caused swarms of bees to emerge from the carcasses of the bulls, restoring the hives. Dionysos also appears in bull form, and another myth says that bees emerged from his body when he was torn apart by the Titans in the form of a bull. Dionysos is both bull god and associated with bees and fermented honey, an intoxicating drink that can infuse us with the god's enduring life essence. Kerenyi, in his book Dionysos, Archetypal Image of Indestructible Life, linked with the concept of Zoe, the life that endures death, and links Dionysos with the concept of Zoe, the life that endures death, and is without end, the life spark which cannot be extinguished. The bee is also a symbol of Zoe. Zoe can be said to be the core experience of the mysteries, that experience of enduring life, the ecstatic experience of the immortal soul within mortal life. In my tradition, honey represents both immortality and the eros, the love, attraction, desire, which flows between us and the gods when we have developed a relationship with the gods. Many goddesses associated with bees were sometimes referred to as black. The meteora was sometimes called Melania, the black one. Melinoe may be a variant of Melena. The Greek bee, Apis mellifera caecropia, native to southern Greece, is often dark or black in colour, as is the native British bee, for that matter. The references to goddesses as black and to bees connects them to the underworld and to death and resurrection. I'm now going to read a short essay by my Orphic teacher from Greece, who unfortunately is now deceased. The bee priestesses, Lereos Melissae, or Melissas in plural, were the priestesses of Minoan Crete, the followers of the legendary Pasiphae, the wife of Minos, daughter of the sun, sister of Circe and Aeetes. She somehow evolved into goddess Earth and had oracles such as Gaia had. Perhaps this is not very well known. There is the tragedy of a great Hellenist poet, Angelos Sicilianus Dodilas, in Crete. In this play, the chorus consists of Melissa priestesses. Honey by itself has two qualities. First, it is a material that conserves or maintains things inside. Also, it has a golden colour. Both of these are symbols of immortality. So it was considered a sacred material and often offered as koi, or libations to the dead or chthonic deities, or as sponde, a general libation. When offered to the dead, it was mixed with milk, a practice that has great meaning, requiring more time to discuss than this brief essay permits. May I remind you that the word galaxy, which is the gala or milk of Hera, and it is related to the divine power of Earth, but also the cosmic powers, the planets. Again, I've discussed this in my previous talk on Hecate. At ancient Olympia, once every year, there was a festival for Kronos called the Chronia. This was at Kronios' hill, where the forest, unfortunately, has burnt in recent years. They offered to Kronos, as father of Zeus, tiny oxen made of wheat dough, another sacred material like milk, covered on the outside with honey, as a symbol of the two divine substances that Orpheus calls earth and water. The bees were a mystic symbol of the nymphs and the mystes, when symbolically they were united with them by divine eros. They could enjoy the honey, the divine ether, the essence of the gods which offers immortality, since honey as a substance which preserves can symbolically conserve the fine vehicle of the soul forever, to make it immortal. This process was called nympholepsia, accepting a nymph by Eros. Like making love, but a divine love, with a divine being. That is what those bee nymphs were considered. The bees are symbols of the nymphs, offering their divine honey when a soul is pulsing with Eros to the gods. So the begonia tradition had an influence on mystery traditions. The bee is a symbol of immortality, not just reincarnation. From Porphyry's writings, we learn that Melissa was the name of the moon goddess Artemis, and the goddess who took suffering away from mothers giving birth. Souls were symbolized by bees, and it was Melissa who drew souls down to be born. As Porphyry stated, all souls, however, proceeding into generation are not simply called bees, but those who will live justly, and who, after having performed such things as are acceptable to the gods, will again return to their kindred stars. For this insect, the bee, loves to return to the place from whence it first came, and is eminently just and sober. Therefore, we must admit that honeycombs and bees are appropriate and common symbols of the aquatic nymphs, and of souls that are married, as it were, to the humid and fluctuating nature of generation. Souls as bees were lured to earthly life by the promise of earthly delights, such as honey, which was also an offering to the dead. The dual nature of honey, of life and death, also reflects the cycle of existence. As the bee returns to its hive, the Melissa, as initiated soul, returns to its home upon death, to the realm of the gods. The Eleusinian mysteries involved a ritual death, a journey to the underworld to face the goddess of death, a sacred union with the divine, and awareness of and experiential encounter with the divine life spark, within that endures beyond death and is then resurrected. So in modern practice, how do we work with Melinoe? Melinoe is a little-known goddess with few devotees today, but there are a few modern Hellenics who incorporate her into their practice, or who are devotees of her and seek to understand more about who she is through personal practice and UPG. To help in my research on Melinoe, I asked some modern worshippers to tell me about their experiences with Melinoe. Here's a couple of responses. She helps with trauma. She could be invoked to ward off traumatic situations that hinder the development of the soul, living nightmares like bullying, stalking, mass shooting incidents, or being torn away from your parents as a child. And then the second one is also kind of associated with trauma and recovery. So what draws me to her? For me, I've always believed in balance. I think we need to know both sanity and insanity. We need to understand the light and dark in ourselves, the understanding we will do good and evil things. Her duality appeals to me because she is not necessarily good or evil in my eyes. So, my own personal view in Orphic practice. Melinoe can be invoked to banish the maddening stings of the soul. So when we're going through spiritual crisis, Melinoe can help see us through that crisis, and also help us through illusion. She helps us see through the illusions and the delusions that can plague the ego as we follow the spiritual path. She helps us to face our fears and to pass through the blockages on the spiritual path. She helps us deal with the fear of change, the feelings of dissolution and dismemberment that can go with change and spiritual transformation. As the full sister to Dionysos, who is also a god of madness. She can be seen to share his qualities and to bring divine madness and liberation. And I'll end now with my own poem to Melinoe. And this is also a painting that I did of Melinoe. And the poem, the prayer, and the painting can be purchased from my Etsy shop as a prayer card in either A7 or A5 size. And my Etsy shop is Ariadne's Web Creations. I've got a number of prayer cards to various deities on the site, but now I'm going to say the prayer to Melinoe. Melinoe, shadowy goddess, wandering through the night, jewel formed of darkness and of light, conceived near the mouth of the river of tears, give us the power to overcome our fears. Goddess who dances amongst the graves, bringer of madness, Persephone's rage, dark-minded, soothing, collecting the hosts of lost souls and wandering ghosts. Liminal goddess, through darkness you roam. When we are in limbo, you guide us home. Sister of the Onisos, the ecstatic one, god of divine madness, Zev's holy son. O nightmare goddess of unsettling dream, help us to see when things are not as they seem. Help us to see through illusions and shake us from the ego's delusions. O Lady of propitiatory offering, honey sweet, but with madness's sting, apparitional, seen and unseen, accept our offerings, night wandering queen. I'm just going to say one more prayer too. This is a prayer from Proclus, and this is to the gods. Hear me, O gods, you who hold the rudder of sacred wisdom. Lead us mortals back among the immortals as you light in our souls the flame of return. May the ineffable initiations of your hymns give us the power to escape the dark cave of our lives and purify ourselves. Hearken, powerful liberators. Dispel the surrounding obscurity and grant me the power to understand the holy books. Replace the darkness with a pure and holy light. Thus may I truly know the incorruptible God that I am. May a wicked spirit never keep me overwhelmed by ills, submerged in the waters of forgetfulness and far away from the gods and goddesses. May my soul not be fettered in the jails of life, where I am left to suffer a terrifying atonement in the icy cycles of generation. I do not want to wander any more. O you, sovereign gods of radiant wisdom, hear me. Reveal to one who hastens on the path of return the holy ecstasies and the initiations held in the depth of your sacred worlds. So, thank you for watching this video. If you have enjoyed the video, then please like and subscribe to my channel.